Okay, g'day everybody. My name's Anthony Hill from Plastic Pollution Solutions, and we have a fantastic panel of experts here, and we're going to run a Q&A now following the film, The Story of Plastic. I don't know about you, but I couldn't help feel quite overwhelmed during the duration of that film. And I've been involved in this issue for a really, really long time. And I still learned a lot from watching that film. It's not hard to be overwhelmed when you see everything that's going on in the world and everything that's been allowed to happen on our beautiful planet over the last 50 to 70 years. But for those of you who are sharing that feeling of overwhelm, please know that there is a lot happening out there in the world. There is so much going on. There is so much positive that's been happening. I feel really privileged to get to see this kind of thing going on, especially in Australia, as I travel around and go into schools and communities. So it's inspiring to see that, and there is so much out there now, especially here in Australia as well. I found that from following what's going on in other countries, I think we're very lucky here in Australia to have such a lot of people who are passionate about this and who have done a lot. And that brings me to our four panelists here as well. And I'm going to ask them to just speak a little bit about themselves and their background and their organisation, just so to introduce themselves. They are Heidi Tait from Tangaroa Blue, Charko from the Port Phillip EcoCentre, Rebecca Prinz-Ruiz from Plastic Free July, and Dale from Plastic Bag Free Victoria. Since you're right underneath me on my screen, Heidi, I might start with you. Would you like to maybe unmute yourself and say a little bit about what you and Tangaroa Blue are all about?
Yeah, thank you, Anthony, and hi everybody. Good afternoon. So Heidi Taylor, actually Tait now, but I'm still going under both names. So Tangaroa Blue was started 16 years ago in response to marine debris and plastic pollution washing up in the southwest corner of WA. What really surprised us around there was just so many different sources. There was stuff with international writing on it. There was stuff from local litter. There was things coming off commercial fishing and recreational fishing. And our big question was, well, why is it here, and how do we stop it from reappearing in the first place? So since then, Tangaroa Blue has started to coordinate a national program called the Australian Marine Debris Initiative, which is a network of volunteers and over 1,300 partner organisations around the country, all removing debris, collecting data, and more importantly, trying to stop it at the source.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Tangaroa Blue and love to teach kids about it in the schools I visit. And I'd love you to tell us a little bit later on, after the other introductions, about some of the many successes that you've had, especially through, your data collection and that kind of thing. So thanks, Heidi. Underneath Heidi on my screen is Dale. Would you mind introducing yourself, Dale, and tell the people a bit about your organisation?
G'day, everyone. Can you hear me all good?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm from Plastic Bag Free Victoria. We essentially are really sort of just a core group of really activists. We started back in 2015 now, which seems like many moons ago. We started from a group of plastic bag free Moreland and also plastic bag free Torquay, and really what our experience was focusing at a local government level was actually trying to get action on banning plastic bags at the checkout. We realized that you couldn't really target that at a local government level. Would have been nice to have known that probably a year earlier. I dare say we might have been able to get a bit of action a little bit earlier than that. But really, the journey for us and our group was really going from a local government level, then through to a state, and then really understanding all the different levers that the state has as far as being able to control, the sale of plastic bags. And so we started sort of lobbying different people individually, We then ended up putting together a physical petition, which I'm sure a lot of people that are interested in this area have signed. We ended up submitting the 11,000 signature petition. Then from there, we ended up getting an inquiry into the issue. And we sort of worked with a few different politicians to really open that up for community feedback, where we then ended up managing to get, I think it was a few thousand submissions to that inquiry. And then sort of working with that and also using the war on waste, the project, a couple of different news channels. We really sort of used all of that, as well as a network across Australia, to really put pressure on the state government. And then eventually we saw the announcement of a ban at the checkout, which was really great. And so we sort of turned of late we sort of turned our interest towards container deposit scheme for Victoria, which we've also had a great announcement on, which has really been fantastic. And myself, I'm sort of quite preoccupied. I actually managed to get myself elected to Moreland City Council as well in the middle of all of that. So it's been a very busy few years, but it's been a really fantastic journey. And like I sort of said before the movie, I think really understanding the political systems is something that I really want to upskill and share that knowledge with everyone.
Thanks, Dale. Does anybody really understand our political systems entirely? It tends to bamboozle me when I go too deeply into it, so I try to stay away from it as much as possible. We might go a little bit further into that later on. I'd love to know more about the container deposit scheme as well, and when it's going to come in or going to be implemented. So next, Rebecca Prinz-Ruiz, would you like to introduce yourself as well?
Thanks, Anthony, and thanks very much for having me. So I am the founder of Plastic Free July. So it's a behaviour change campaign, really. It didn't start out to be a campaign. It was just about changing myself after visiting one of those recycling facilities that we saw in the movie, or actually here in Australia, they're actually materials recovery facilities which sorts all those materials and into the different types, and learning about the particular challenges around plastic. And that was the moment that I realised that when I put a full recycling bin out into the street, I wasn't really doing the planet the favour that I thought I was. Of course, recycling is really important, but it made me realise that the most important thing we can do is to reduce and not put so much in our bins in the first place. So it started really around individual behaviour change and focusing on single-use plastics. And what we've seen over the last 10 years is people, once they've started to make changes in their own lives, that there's been this progression of taking it into their communities, into their workplaces, into their schools, into their business. Like many others on the panel, have been really delighted to see the rise in engagement and awareness and interest, and also action on this issue. With Plastic Free July, we're really focus on getting a lot of people to make small changes, rather than just a few people who can fit their year's worth of landfill waste in a jar. That's not quite me. But I really think to Dale's point, I think when we start to have to come together, to take action, to have our to speak out, and to start engaging on these issues across our community, that's when businesses start to listen and governments start to listen. So I'm sure that the engagement in or the uptake of the plastic bag bans and the container deposit schemes and all of the other single-use plastics policy initiatives that are happening around the country have come from the community action and community concern on these issues. So I'm really delighted. I think we've got a lot more work, obviously a lot of work to do. There's a lot of challenges that the statistics around the increase in plastic production that is forecast is really scary, and I think we do need to grow this conversation around, you know, demanding and requiring recycled content in products. That there's a lot to do.
Absolutely, and I'm really impressed with how Plastic Free July has just got the message out in such a friendly way. It's something that I hear spoken about all the time. You know, it's, as you say, it's in school kids challenging each other. You know, people in the workplace challenging each other, and it's all feeding this movement. And you know, the biggest movements, the biggest revolutions never came from the top. They came from the bottom, and this is what everybody here on the panel is about: grassroots change. So I might just move on to Fam now, and she can introduce herself. Are you there, Fam?
Yeah. Can you hear me properly?
Sure can.
Great. Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Fam. I work at the Port Phillip EcoCentre as the marine biologist, and the EcoCentre is located in St Kilda in Melbourne. And we've existed for 20 years now and grown a fair bit in that time, thankfully. And what we do is mostly sustainability and environmental education for schools and the community. And we also do a lot of community action and citizen science research. We concentrate mostly on Port Phillip Bay and the surrounding catchment and waterway health. And we're also home of the Port Phillip Baykeeper. You might know him, Neil Blake, the dude with the beard. You can't miss him. He's always around on the beaches, talking to people and doing wildlife surveys. And my specialization is mostly running the citizen science programs for the Port Phillip EcoCentre. So we do all kinds of things from monitoring water quality and looking at sunscreen chemicals in Port Phillip Bay, to doing mollusk and sea star surveys, all kinds of wildlife things. So yeah, we do a whole lot of everything. But about 5.5, 6 years ago, we started really looking at plastic pollution in Port Phillip Bay because we could see that the problem was getting a lot worse. And we also noticed that most of the community groups are already doing amazing work in this space, like including Tangaroa Blue and lots of smaller community groups in our areas. We're concentrating mostly on the macroplastics, so the larger items that they can clean up and pick up from the beach and then count and put into a database and collect their data. But we also noticed that the very small stuff, the microplastics, were often flying under the radar. So for the last 5.5 years, we've been doing manta net trawls together with the Yarra Riverkeeper Association in the Yarra and the Maribyrnong rivers for microplastics. And we are trying to quantify what exactly the microplastic pollution problem is and how much goes into Port Phillip Bay and where it comes from and what we can do about it. So microplastics are plastics pieces that are broken up pieces from larger items, and they're smaller than 5 millimeters in diameter. So it's actually quite challenging to capture them and to count them and to really try and quantify what is going on in that space. But they are quite a problem. Because the smaller a piece of plastic is, the more species of animals can potentially digest them. And we're now starting to see, you know, scientific research coming out all over the world of how microplastics are even in us now. They're in our food, you know, they are in the air that we breathe, they're in the water that we drink, whether it be from a plastic bottle or from the tap. So they are becoming a massive problem for human health. And I think this documentary is very different from other environmental documentaries in this space that I've seen, because it's now, you can see the progression of, you know, first the documentaries were more about how it affects wildlife and seabirds and all that sort of thing on remote islands. But we are now really understanding how the plastic pollution problem is coming back to us as people and how it is affecting our health and the health of the more vulnerable communities in developing countries as well. So yeah, I'm very excited for this film to have come out and really show the macro scale of this problem. Yeah, as like a progression from, you know, where it's just been affecting wildlife. And so this is a space that we're very interested in following and researching as well.
Cool. Yeah, I'm a really big fan of the film that your centre made, Baykeepers, back about
Yeah.
5 years ago. I've shown it in a lot of schools, and I've watched it and shown it to friends. It's a beautiful film, and the people out there might like to. It's freely available on YouTube. It's just called Baykeepers. It's only 20 minutes long, and it's a wonderful example of, you know, science and community and school kids and everything coming together to solve a problem. And I know. Pretty sure Heidi's organisation was involved in that as well.
Yeah, it is in it.
Yeah.
Definitely.
We've got a few questions there, but I might just hold off on that. Everybody out there, the participants, feel free to type your questions in. They might just be aimed at one of the panelists, or they might just be a general question. We will get around to all of them because we've got a bit of time. I might just stay with you, Fam, there and ask you something. Was there a personal reason? Have you always been an eco-warrior? Were you a born eco-warrior, or was there a light bulb moment in your life that caused you to go in a different direction? And I might ask the others this as well.
Yeah, well, I've always been insatiably curious. I think this is why I chose science, because I had always had so many questions about the natural world that would drive my mom nuts when I was a kid, always asking why? And she said, well, maybe you should become a scientist so you can learn how to answer your own questions. So that's what I did. I studied biology, and in my first year of studies, I stuck my head underwater of my first scuba diving course, and I saw a coral reef, and I never came back from that. So I was like, yep, marine biology it is. So I always had these big dreams of, you know, doing coral research and diving every day and possibly swimming with whales, you know, all those kinds of stereotypical things that you think about when you hear marine biology. But then when I came to Melbourne, the issues that actually needed to be handled were very, very different. And this is how I kind of got into the plastic pollution space, because as you said, Anthony, we made Baykeepers, and that film came out. That was about to come out when I started at the EcoCentre. And after that, it gained so much traction and so much momentum. And we realized that this plastic pollution problem was a lot larger than we thought it was. And that it really warranted, you know, a lot of our attention and community engagement and community education as well. So that's kind of how I got here. So yes, passion, not quite what I expected, but it feels really good to be able to work with other people such as Heidi and Dale and Rebecca and yourself on this massive scale problem, but also seeing the advances that we are making in that space over time. So it's very, very satisfying to me to be able to work with other people and solve these problems.
It sounds like there is a personal connection there with the ocean. And Port Phillip, I was blown away. I didn't realise how abundant and how diverse the ecosystem is there, just in that bay, and that bay is massive. It's really worth protecting. What about you, Rebecca? Any aha moments for you, or was it that day you looked in the recycling bin? You've got to turn your,
the day that I looked in the recycling bin was, I think, my kind of aha moment about the plastics issue. I think I've been aware of our impacts on the environment from quite an early age. I spent time growing up on a farm in our southwest. It was a very small, relatively small farm for the area. It was quite a new farm, and it was in the process of expansion, and there were clearing bans introduced in the catchment because of rising salinity and impact on the local rivers. And we ended up leaving the farm, and I think for me that was the first realisation that what we do affects the environment. So for I think I've just been quietly kind of observing and noticing it ever since.
Yeah, human impact, what our behaviours cause for, you know, wildlife and the very systems that keep us alive. What about you, Dale? Any aha moments for you?
I think I've had I got a really interesting background. I'm not your traditional sort of grow up sort of in the environmental space. I actually finished my degree at uni, went in, became I was stockbroking and trading sort of land. So from that point, you know, working in that industry during the GFC was kind of a nice eye opener, and then actually pushed me across to energy trading, and then understanding renewables and actually understanding how the entire system that we live in, the whole fossil fuel, convenience economy that we live in, and how it's so, interlinked, really sort of opened my eyes. I went back and did an engineering degree at uni, and went overseas and lived in Sweden for a bit. And that probably was the moment that really warped my perception and really understanding that, this is just one big system, and, everything's just a matter of prioritization. And at the moment, and, back in 2015, when we started Plastic Bag Free Victoria, we weren't prioritizing, the costs which were being socialized at the time, while, big businesses made money from the convenience factor. And so that's sort of, my journey has been a very interesting one. But yeah, definitely really, going overseas and understanding that, everyone right across the world, they're all working on this issue and these issues. And I think we've got a lot to learn from each other.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I lived in Norway, next door to Sweden, for quite a while, and that was where my aha moment happened. Paddling around in those beautiful so-called pristine fjords in a kayak, and then finding plastic floating around, and wondering. Well, it struck me that Sweden and Norway are both leaders when it comes to waste management and litter, and they're two of the most wealthy countries in the world. Yet I was finding a whole lot of plastic in the environment. Heidi, what about you?
I guess I was always, I was lucky enough to grow up with parents that loved spending time out in natural parks, national parks, and I always felt really connected. And I don't know, a lot of people probably have felt some place around the world where they just felt really energized by being connected to nature. And I just love that feeling. So I tended to kind of seek it out, and had, I was really lucky. I went traveling when I was 18 and really didn't go home for 15 years, and got to see some amazing places around the country. And during that time, I became a diving instructor, and was really sold on that. And 20 years I've been a diving instructor. Unfortunately, not diving as much as I used to, but used to spend every single moment in the water. And when you start to see the environment and marine animals that come up and they choose to interact with you, they're not on a leash, or they're not being fed, they're not in a cage, they're not in an aquarium, they're wild animals, and they can come and interact with you and leave whenever they want. And you see what we're doing by the way that we're living and the priorities that humanity has, how much that's impacting our environment. I just felt like we really need to change, and it has to start with you. You can't finger point at other people and blame other people if you're not doing everything you possibly can. And so Tangaroa was born out of that. And the meaning of Tangaroa is the god of the ocean for the Polynesian and the Maori people, and it's look after me and I look after you. And I think that that's something that we really need to reconnect with and live by.
Yeah, there's something about Indigenous peoples that had that connection to country, which I spoke about when we had the initial introduction, and caring for country, and something which one of the many things I feel our Western culture needs to take notice of and take on. We've got a few questions there now, so I might just start going through them in the order they came in. The first one's from Chloe Foreman. Thanks, Chloe. And it's a general question. If the panel can tell us anything about Terracycle, and if they're effectively recycling things, and REDcycle would be great to learn more about too. I can say a bit about REDcycle, not a lot about Terracycle. REDcycle is an organisation that collects soft plastics via, amongst other places, supermarkets like Coles and Woolworths, and everybody feel free to add anything else to this if I miss out anything. And then they send the soft plastics to RePlus, an organisation called RePlus, who turn it into other items which are highly unlikely to end up as environmental pollution, like park benches and fence posts and that kind of thing. And so as far as I know, every single Coles and Woolworths and possibly other supermarkets have a REDcycle bin where you can take all of your soft plastic and it will be dealt with. Can anyone add anything there with regards to REDcycle?
I'm going to jump in just quickly, just to let you guys know that next Saturday we actually have an interview with REDcycle, so tune in on Saturday the 13th.
Nice.
I would love to add to that, because we are really trying to call out the greenwash, because it's really important that we make good consumer decisions and we don't just believe. And that story you just told, Anthony, is great and everyone feels excited. And again, it's like what Rebecca said. She had a moment where she realized putting everything in the recycling bin actually wasn't doing the best for the planet. And I would just like to caution people about just believing that because you can make something out of something, that should be the best outcome, without looking at whether that item that you're actually making is fit for purpose. Now, I'm actually up in far north Queensland at the moment. We're doing some monitoring from our Reef Clean project. And part of what we're looking at is around the infrastructure on beaches and parks, and the amount of recycled plastic park benches and bollards and car stops that we are seeing that have lost millimeters of microplastics from them because they are sitting out in harsh environmental conditions in the sun, is meaning that the amount of microplastics coming off these products is phenomenal. So plastic is not an item that we should make into something and then stick in an environment where it has extreme weather temperature differences, because it can't sustain, it can't survive, and all it does is crack, break up, and abrade these microplastics from that product as well. So I don't think that either of those solutions are actually what we should be using for our recycling. Yet, unfortunately, everybody's so excited about it because it sounds good.
Great input there. Yeah, it's about... sorry, is someone else going to...
Oh, I was just going to love to add something there, Anthony, just further to what Heidi was saying. So I think in, you know, we do need to start collecting these more difficult to recycle packaging and items. But I think one of the challenge, so in some ways it's a step in the right direction, but it's like, what is this material being used for? And the problem that I see with those items, so it's packaging that we're using, and often it's because that's what our food comes in and we don't have any choice. But then there's products that it's being made into, they're making it into products that only local governments would be buying. It's not truly circular in that we're not reusing this, that material isn't being made remade into the packaging. It's being made, it's one more use, but we're not thinking about the second, the third and the fourth use, etc. And that's why I really feel like until we start and there's a cost there. There's a cost, you know, that program is kind of like an add-on, but we need to have the programs that are integral to the system, and the cost is going back to the manufacturers. And when you have things like the minimum mandated content on recycled plastics in packaging, that's when I think, you know, as the film said, then you get the investment into the recycling infrastructure, and it becomes mainstream and scalable, and not just this niche which is only perhaps recycling 5% of that packaging, or I don't know what the figures are, probably possibly even less than that.
Yeah, sure. It's I feel as though we need to be emphasising avoidance before any kind of recycling. And thanks for that, Heidi and Rebecca as well. I wasn't aware that those benches broke down so quickly. Does anybody have any input on Terracycle? Because I have very little experience with it.
I haven't really heard from them in a while. I haven't anyway. They're an American-based company. They do operate in Australia still, I think, and they were most well known for a long time for being able to recycle cigarette butts. So you could, as a community group, for example, collect cigarette butts during your beach cleanups, and we know that cigarette butts are still the #1 most littered item, not just in Australia but in the world. And they would send you like a post pack, and you could fill it up with the cigarette butts and then send it to them for free, and they would recycle that. However, that program was sponsored by the cigarette industry, and they pulled the funding a number of years ago. So I know that is not happening anymore, but I think they're still doing toothpaste tubes. So you can collect those and send them over, and a few other items as well that cannot be recycled in your normal recycling bin. So yeah, it's an extra step. But yeah, I'm not really sure what programs they're running at the moment. Maybe anyone, Heidi, are you aware of anything that they're doing? It's been really quiet on that front for a while.
Yeah, they're doing the oral care one. These are all industry-backed programs. So there's an oral care company that supports the oral care recycling. They were also doing like beauty tubes, like sunscreen containers or face moisturising items as well. There was one with the Australia Post packs that they were working with Australia Post. So there was a number of those programs, but they are still very active in Australia. We've been working with them on the Operation Clean Sweep. They are doing some stuff on the bread tags at the moment as well. So there are programs that they're all listed and you can sign up to them on the Terracycle website.
Great. There's another question that's come in from Anya Showman. The film is focusing on the United States regarding subsidisation of oil and gas. How is the situation in other parts of the world, i.e. subsidisation? It says Mariana was going to answer the question. Is that correct, Mariana?
No, sorry, you can do it.
Oh, I'm not sure about the answer to that. I'm wondering if any of my panelists might know. How do we compare with the US when it comes to the subsidisation of oil and gas? Anyone have any ideas? What about you, Dale?
Yeah, and I guess with fossil fuel subsidies, compared to, say, the renewable sector, for instance, fossil fuel subsidies just outnumber it. They absolutely dwarf the amount that's given to other industries. I guess the issue being that all of this is complementary. I mean, and again, I feel like I'm a bit of a broken record when I harp on about the fact that everything is a system. I mean, you're looking at governments that are looking to industry to help them write the rules for the industry. I mean, the fact that we don't have strong producer responsibility or product stewardship laws is because we sort of politely ask industry to to actually write all this stuff or to participate, and you leave it to communities, and usually it is sort of local governments that end up having to fund all the bills to clean up all the litter and all the packaging. And so it is definitely a situation where if all of the subsidies for the fossil fuel economy were removed, we weren't seeing as much of a byproduct from plastic production from natural gas and oil. I definitely think that the cost of plastic would probably increase, and then we would probably start to see the market actually provide some solutions where we're not using such a cheap what is a resource, and at the moment it's treated as trash. And I think we also need to start talking about the fact that under the linear economy in which we live, something that's cheap and easy without any sort of government intervention, the market is going to always keep using that solution. We're not going to get another outcome. And so unfortunately it does require communities to work together, just like we did with Plastic Bag Free Victoria, to lobby local, state, federal governments for change.
Yeah, I think you're touching on this, and the film touched on this as well. This is still the problem, right? So we're doing our best to do the right thing, to do our cleanups as a communities. We try to recycle as well as we can, but the entire system is still set up to facilitate more and more production of plastic, right? So recycling is just a way out for the plastics industry to still be able to produce more and more and more, right? So they say like, oh, if we can recycle everything, then we're going to be okay. And it's just not like that. So it is the entire system from A to Z is just set up in a way that industry can keep producing as much as they want, and they are scheduled to grow 40% in the next 5 years. And this is just the plastics industry, and they are just not being held accountable for it. And this is where subsidies of fossil fuels and gas can make a real difference, like what Dale is saying. We need to totally change the way that the market works, or that that system is set up, so that there is not a, you know, unregulated amount of plastic being produced for what, single-use packaging, you know. So yeah, they're like what you're saying. I really like feel that, where you have we still have this linear economy, and even if we go into a circular economy, you know, we're still allowing plastic industry to grow and grow and grow. So what are we going to do about that with those subsidies?
Exactly.
Yes, right?
Yep. It's some great discussions here around recycling. I was recently at the National Plastic Summit, where it was all meant to be about addressing plastic pollution, and I feel that all they talked about was recycling.
Is this in Canberra?
Sorry?
Is this the one that was held in Canberra?
Yeah, the one that ScoMo opened and made some really emphatic statements in the beginning. I think the next question might be one for Heidi. It's about data, and it's from Kylie Tune. She says, I get it, I'm a health researcher. We have a local data collection array, and we arrange by local IPA ranges. Should I arrange every part of every cleanup to data cleaning? Or maybe that's collection, when we have so much rubbish to collect and so many kilometres in remote directions.
So Kylie, I totally get you. We work in Cape York, where we're removing up to a tonne per kilometre, and we might do 6 to 7 kilometres over a week. That can equate to somewhere between 100 and 200,000 individual items. And it is really impossible to remove everything and count everything. If you have to decide what are you going to do, you know, you want to remove the threat, so you want to remove everything that you can. But of course, our big mantra is if all we do is clean up, that's all we're ever going to do. So we need the evidence as well to push for change. So I'm absolutely happy to speak to you offline, and I know that we have been connected a little bit online before about setting up ways that you can get a solid data set that you have the capacity to do with the ranges, as well as removing everything that you did that you need to as well. And basically that's around setting up your monitoring sites. So if you're going to do 7 kilometres cleanup, then you may choose to do, you know, a certain number of smaller segments out of there where everything's collected, and for the rest of the stuff you remove it and count it, you remove it and weigh it, and you know how much volume that you have. And that way you can remove what you want to, but you can also get a solid data set as well.
Thanks, Heidi. Next question from Gabriella Hont. Surprised the film didn't mention polystyrene. What is being done, given that many online purchases are packaged in it? And that's one of my pet hates too. I feel as though it's maybe the worst type of plastic, most problematic type of plastic when it gets into the environment and breaks up so easily and flies around and floats and whatever. Does any of you have any inputs with any kind of planned legislation of phasing out polystyrene packaging?
Anthony, at the moment, in a local context here in Melbourne, at the moment, a lot of the reports on polystyrene research are coming out. So the Yarra Riverkeepers Association, they've done, over the last year, they've done a big polystyrene project where they worked with Clean Water Group to remove polystyrene beads from the sides of the Yarra, because they all get stuck in the reeds there, and just found enormous amounts of it. So that's been reported on. You can read that report on the Yarra Riverkeepers website, and it's just come out a few months ago. In addition to that, the EcoCentre will be releasing a report on microplastics in the Yarra and Maribyrnong very soon, so within the next 2 months, which will also touch on the polystyrene issue. And there is currently a lot of movement in that space here in Victoria. So we're working with Metro Waste Resource Recovery Group, which is a government agency who have contacts in the polystyrene industry. We have some contacts going here where we might be able to speak with the Master Builders Association about polystyrene use and containment of polystyrene on building sites, construction sites as well, which is a major source of polystyrene pollution in the rivers. So there is currently a lot of movement in that space, and it is actually quite exciting. So definitely stay on top of you know, the newsletters from your favorite environmental organizations, including Yarra Riverkeepers and the EcoCentre, to see what kind of conversations are about to happen in the next year or so around polystyrene.
Yeah, I feel the key word there is conversation as well. And often in takeaway shops, polystyrene will be used, you know, to serve up your fish and chips or whatever. And these are conversations that people out there can have with their local takeaway shop. I've done it many times. I take my own containers in, but you know, they can move to other, maybe recycled cardboard contained packaging for their takeaway food. Something that Dale might be interested in, and the other people out there, is what Northern Beaches of Sydney Council have done, a thing called Swap This for That, and they've engaged, I think, hundreds of businesses now to move to non-plastic packaging with their, you know, retail outlets on the Northern Beaches of Sydney, and it's going really, really well. I think they have 2 dedicated staff who are just going to all of the retail outlets and also promoting it amongst the community. So the next question, there's from Heidi Tait. I developed a training program on environmental awareness, which is approved by Bahrain government, the Bahrain government, about what is waste and how to change how to communicate the issue. Is there any program you would recommend? Would anyone there like to jump in and answer that question?
Is that around programs that are similar for Australia? Is that the question?
Yeah, it just says I developed a training program on environmental awareness, which is approved by the Bahrain government, about what is waste and how to change and how to communicate. But is there any program that you would recommend? Maybe they're looking for tips to adapt their program. But do you have any on your Tangaroa Blue website?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would probably be safe to say that all of the panelists have resources that we've developed for those purposes. The Tangaroa Blue model is based, you know, around the Australian Marine Debris Initiative. So we try and create awareness at each of those steps. So the issue is very important. You know, the data collection side of it, we have a lot of resources around that. And then also how communities can use that data to actually create source reduction plans that aim to stop at the source. And then how that all connects to, you know, reporting to the government at all levels. All of this stuff needs to be scalable. And so making it relevant to community, industry and government is really important. That's what we've tried to do.
There's a great book out there, which I'm yet to read, by, oh no, I can't remember the name of the author, Jerry someone, called The Waste Between Our Ears. And he talks about how there actually should be nothing that is wasted at all. Everything should become food for another process. So that person might get some tips there. Thanks, Heidi. The next question is from Carolina. What's the biggest plastic issue facing Victoria and Australia at the moment? Maybe Heidi again, you might have a bit of a handle on that.
Oh, look, I would say what to do with it. And I'm sure everybody else would have an opinion on that as well. We keep creating this waste. We decided to send it off to China. They decided they didn't want it. So instead of Australia going, hey, well, let's look internally at about an industry that we could set up. No, Australia went, hey, what other third world country can we send it to? So I would say that our biggest issue is what to do with all the waste that we're creating. And per capita, Australia is contributing a phenomenal amount. And we're not that green when it comes to our consumerism. And I'll say it again, we keep believing the greenwash. We need to be way smarter with our purchasing and our consumerism to make sure that we really understand what we're purchasing and not believing the rubbish that's coming from the person trying to sell it to us.
Yeah, and if I could jump in there as well, I mean, I think probably the greatest issue that I think I've found is that there's so many people that are so motivated to take action on these issues, and there's just so much energy that's wasted. You know, people get on social media and they'll spend, you know, hours arguing with people in different, you know, Facebook threads, but, you know, you have local governments that have waste and litter policies right around the country that are absolutely dying for people to give them feedback. You've got plastic wise policies that could be implemented. There's, you know, there's such a range of issues. You know, getting out to your beach patrols and your different groups, your Tangaroa Blues to help out. I mean, there's so many ways to be involved, and I think it's just about being smart with the finite amount of energy that you have as a campaigner. You know, where to put your energy. I think that's a real challenging one.
You, Tham, did you have something to add there?
Not really. I think it's all been said. Those were really great answers.
No, that's fine. It's funny because I hear so much about, and probably all have as well, how much, let's say, the poor countries in Southeast Asia contribute to plastic. Yet Australia, it's in, as far as I know, it's in the tens of thousands of tonnes per year that we put into the ocean here as well, for a very small population. So if anybody says, Australia's, doing well, comparatively, we're absolutely not. I just want to ask Emily and Mariana, are we meant to finish up at 3:30, or can we keep going a bit longer, or what would you like to do?
We can go for another 10-15 minutes because we don't need to have a break before Heidi's one, but I will need to share some slides in between. So go for it. So we'll wrap up in about 10 minutes.
Sure.
Yep.
We'll try and get through some more of the questions. What are your thoughts on waste to energy? Ooh, I bet there's a lot of opinions on that. What are your thoughts on waste to energy as a solution to plastics in landfill? I'm going to hand it over to the first person to put their hand up. And in the meantime, encourage everybody out there to read a great book called Junk Raft by Dr. Marcus Ericsson, who is a ocean plastics researcher and has been for a couple of decades now. And he really articulates well about plastics, about waste to energy as a solution. Who wants to jump in there?
Oh my God, yes. So waste to energy it's a cop-out. I find it a real cop-out. First of all, it's fossil fuels. You're burning fossil fuels, right? Because plastic is made of oil. So it's not, generating energy out of that is going to give you the same result as burning gas, basically. The second is, if you're going to invest in waste to energy infrastructure, you are again facilitating the system of rampant production. Because what we've seen in Sweden, for example, is where they had these really sophisticated waste to energy plants, and they started running out of rubbish in the country. And so they started importing rubbish to burn from other countries in Europe. But what does that mean? Because if you're gonna, it's just like with recycling, right? Where the plastics industry can just say like, oh, we're just going to keep producing because you can recycle it. Problem solved. We're just going to keep producing all of this plastic and drilling up all of this oil because we can burn it for energy. Problem solved. It's gone. And it's just not how it works. So I really don't support this, especially not from a circular economy point of view and moving away from fossil fuels.
Yeah, there's another thing that I learnt from reading that book is that I think it was in Hawaii where the local government there had to have a contract with the waste to energy factory or facility, and they had to guarantee a certain amount of waste went in there, and if they didn't, they would get fined. So the fine being paid by the local government, which is our taxes, again. So it's not, again, and it's not discouraging or not encouraging avoidance, which is what we need to do.
Plastic production, because what if we're going to run out of landfill rubbish, right? Like there's been so many investments already in getting the factories of the plants to work and all that. What are we going to burn? So it's a band-aid once again.
Yeah, I think something as well to keep in mind, which I'm sure is in the mind of many people, but the fact that we are in a climate emergency at the moment, and you've got situations where we've got net zero targets that are starting to pop up. I know our state here in Vic has a 2050 net zero target. And so essentially for a lot of these projects and a lot of these plants to be viable, they have to run for, 20, 30, 40 years. And if we're actually serious about tackling the climate emergency, we can't be operating these things, in perpetuity, because they are essentially an oil burning, factory. I don't think, I haven't experienced any constituents come up to me and say, Dale, we'd really love an incinerator built in the city. I don't think it's terribly popular. And I think, if you are really serious at addressing the climate emergency side of things, well, then you'll look to, separate your organics out of your landfill, you know, because we all know that when that goes to landfill, the major methane emissions that come from that. But yeah, it is something that I don't think, you know, governments are really thinking about that long-term, those long-term contracts that make these things viable. You know, we really do need to think outside just the election cycle for this one in just addressing that short-term problem.
Thanks, Dave. A couple more questions to get through there as well. There's one that I saw there that I think I'm going to finish with in a moment, but let's go on to biodegradable, because that's always an interesting topic to discuss. The rise of biodegradable compostable plastics is also problematic because there are these mostly require industrial compost systems, which are very limited in Australia. Most people don't read the fine print, and then they buy these and they're not really realising they're going to end up in landfill. Does anyone want to take on the biodegradable compostable issue there at all, out of the panellists?
Yeah, I'd like to start with that one, and I think this is a real area that we need to look at. I think particularly with you know, with all of this concern and around single-use plastics, I think that there, as Heidi says, there's a lot of greenwashing going on, and I've seen particularly a lot of the small independent businesses, like they're trying to do the right thing. They're paying more for this eco packaging that's biodegradable and compostable, and absolutely we need to look at what happens to it if it ends up in the marine environment, and what happens to it when it ends up in our waste management systems. To have organic industrial scale composting facilities that can process the organics, that's a significant cost which is being paid by our local governments, and actually ultimately borne by the residents and ratepayers. And I think that we need to get way more sophisticated in our conversations and our understanding of these issues, and looking at where this packaging is going to end up. Is it going to end up in public place bins that are destined for landfill, no matter how biodegradable or compostable they are? And what I'm seeing kind of around the country is really a lot of small businesses that are wanting support and looking to, well, where do we find out the information? What are the alternatives? What should we buy? And I think collectively, someone mentioned a moment ago about how we just need to work together. I think we really need to come together and look at sharing solutions, and the solutions that fit one LGA aren't necessarily going to fit another area, but I really feel that businesses are wanting to know solutions, and that you know, it's all very well to be a large company or a chain where you've got research arms that can look into the best type of packaging, but I think it's the challenges particularly for small businesses. And what at the end of the day we don't want to happen is single-use plastics just be replaced by some single-use other materials. So I think you know, we also need to look at systems of switching for systems of reusables that work at scale as well.
Exactly. I guess it's shifting the disposable mindset, and at the same time innovation, which is going to lead to you know, less plastic in the ocean. And it is something that people don't consider, is that compostable bag, when it ends up in the ocean, and they do. I've seen so many dog poo bags, these so-called compostable dog poo bags that are on sand dunes and out in the ocean, and they, you know, the ocean, I guess, decreases the rate at which something is going to be able to compost or safely decompose, quickly and safely decompose. So they're definitely not the solution. I'm just going to check the time there. I think we've only got 5 minutes, so I might. There was a great question there from Scott, and I really feel for him then, and he might want to just direct his question to Dale later on, because I guess I'd really like to finish on a positive note here, and that is from Jen. And Jen said, we're collectively we are collectively the converted, us here, and possibly many others who are watching the film and making positive changes. What are the panels, your guys' tips to get the message out to those people who are oblivious to the environmental issues, and what is the best way to engage them? So to convert people, I guess. Can we start with you, Heidi?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think the first thing is to understand that not everybody cares about turtles. And while that might be our individual drivers on why we've made decisions in our consumerism, in the way that we dispose of our rubbish, you know, who we choose to support, and so forth, that's based on our own drivers. And it's okay that not everybody cares about turtles, but we need to find out what they do care about. And if we can connect the same outcome to a different driver, then we still get to where we need them to be. And I guess it was something that I learned, you know, really strongly when we were able to bring the Operation Clean Sweep program from America to Australia. Now, that's a plastics industry program that looks at reducing plastic resin pellets from the industry. And to get them to pick that program up and run with it and adopt it, I needed something more than it's going to save turtles. And so we needed to look at different drivers, and those drivers were that they were losing a resource they were paying for. So there was a bottom line, there was a financial driver. The second one was that there was a reduction in occupational health and safety claims from companies that had picked it up because there was a safer workplace. And the third one was that the EPA could fine them. So there was 3 different drivers that still got us to the right outcome. So maybe just try and think about different ways of giving your message to connect with different drivers that people have. As long as you get them there in the end, it doesn't matter what road they took.
Yeah. Great, I love it. Yes, sometimes it's the hip pocket that is what drives people, and I like to tell people about how much waste management and recycling is costing them. It's in the billions, and what could we be using that money on? Rebecca, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I'd love to go next. Just look, firstly, I'd like to say I don't think, because people don't have, we are definitely the converted, but because people don't have take the same actions and make the choices, it doesn't mean that they're oblivious to the environmental issues. So we work really closely with a behavioural scientist, and we do a lot of research behind Plastic Free July and of the general public. And what our research shows is 84% of the population are concerned about plastic waste ending up in our environment and our oceans and in landfill. So people do care, they are concerned, but then there's a disconnect between their values and their consumer choices and their behaviours. So the work that we do and the kind of the approach that we take is, how do we get people to make that alignment? And so it's not about, and there's a really high level of awareness about the problem. So what we don't need is, whilst like a movie like that is great to equip ourselves to know where to act and to learn more about the issue, it's probably not something that the general public is necessarily going to want to watch. And so what our research has shown is that people want solutions. They want to know what to do. They want reminders to take their shopping bags, the prompts in the supermarket car parks. They want companies to change and to reduce their packaging. They don't want all the fruit and veg in the supermarket to be packaged. So we need to make it easy for them. We need to and show stories of change and not just folk. And that's why, I was involved in West Australia's introduction of the plastic bag ban. When we were promoting that, we weren't showing images of turtles wrapped up in plastic bags, because all that does is makes you feel miserable and leaves you without a plastic bag. What it was, here's how you remember your bag. Or you could take a box, or you could just be a juggler. And so it's really, I think we need to meet people where they're at. I agree with Heidi, like there's different drivers for different people, but we need to also stop judging as well, I think. And that's something I've really learned by doing research and getting out into the general public. And when we prepare posters or resources, we test them, and I'm not allowed to test them. I live in Fremantle. I'm not allowed to go test resources and stuff on the streets where I live. We go out into the suburbs, we go onto the city streets and meet people where we're at. And I think that's really what we need to go on this journey of change together. Thanks,
Rebecca. I highly recommend everybody jump on your website on the Plastic Free July website and challenge their friends and colleagues and schoolmates there. What about you, Dale? Any quick tip for people?
Yeah, a really quick tip from me is really try and expand your sphere of influence by collaborating and really using you know, and I'm probably very biased in this one being a local government councillor, but local governments are a huge tool that is so underutilised right across Australia. I think, you know, local governments can help drive the education message. They can put in, you know, plastic-wise policies. They can have waste and litter strategies that have, you know, zero waste to landfill targets. You know, you've got reusable nappy programs and all sorts of programs that can be driven from a local government space. And quite often, all it takes is 1 or 2 emails to a budget submission, and then you've got the program or you've got a pilot off the ground and up and running. And I think it is massively underutilized, and it's something that, you know, you could just get your family members to all email a bunch of councillors, and you can really change. And it's making it easier for the people who aren't switched on to this stuff that will happily, you know, take a reusable nappy, but they're not the ones that are going to lobby for it to be introduced. And so I think that for the people who are politically motivated and engaged in this space, I really do think use your local governments, because there's a lot of opportunity there.
Thanks, Dale. And lastly, with Fan, quick tip.
Well, at EcoCentre, we try to get them while they're young. we facilitate education programs for anywhere from the tiny littlies in early learning centers all the way up to tertiary students. And we find it that the phenomenon of pester power is very powerful. So when the kids learn something at school about plastic use in one of our excursions, or they see the film Baykeepers that you mentioned in school as well, and we do a litter activity afterwards, the kids really get on board. They get it. They just get it straight away. And they will bring those learnings back to their families who might not be so aware of the issues or not really caring what to do about it, and actually pester their parents into bringing their reusable bags to the supermarket, commenting on the amount of plastic bags that are coming home, and asking their parents, why didn't you bring a box to the butcher? You know, so we've had multiple stories of kids really driving the change. And I think that next generation that is growing up now is going to do things very differently, because they have been educated from a very young age into these issues. So they are already aware of what is going on and wanting to do things differently. So we try to really empower, not just educate, but also empower the youth and young people in programs where they can work with their own families and communities to create that change from the inside.
Unreal. That's exactly what we do as well at Plastic Pollution Solutions. It's wonderful working with the younger generation, and it's amazing to see and hear the feedback from teachers and parents about how influential young kids are with their families now. Something that wasn't like that when I was a kid, you know. And I guess I'd like to say, from my point of view, we can't be passengers anymore. For more than half my life, I was a passenger. We need to participate. We need to participate. And that means in participating any way you can, that is actively participating. And you've got everybody out there now can see 4 amazing people up there on the screen who have started up something really incredible. And Australia has been at the forefront with this at a community level through local government policy changes. That hasn't been happening in other parts of the world, through Tangaroa Blue with a national marine debris database. How many countries have one of them, you know? And with Plastic Free July started up in Australia as well. And you've got other organisations, you know, like Boomerang Bags and others that have started here in Australia. So join in, participate, talk to your local members of government, go in and speak to people in your local council, your local councillors, and tell them that this needs to change. And also I guess looking inward as well at your own behaviour and being a conscious consumer. And that's something we do talk to kids about in school, becoming a conscious consumer and not like a robot consumer and just walking along the shopping supermarket aisles and picking this and not knowing where it's come from, what it's packaged in, how much it costs, how long it's come and how much packaging has been used in the supply chain, who made it, who got paid or didn't get paid enough for making it. We have to change our ways and our culture. So I think we're pretty much out of time now. In fact, we're over time. I might encourage everybody there to keep up the conversations with the people you know, and you will receive a resource and action kit from the organisers, Zero Waste Victoria. And if you're going to join in Heidi's workshop, just stay online. And I might just now hand it back to Emily and see if we're just going to wrap this up now, what's going to happen.
So this segment was brought to you by Carrymore. Howard Zinn once said that small acts, when multiplied by millions of people, can transform the world. To celebrate the launch of Carrymore, they're offering you free zero-waste carbon neutral shipping on any order of their brand new PETA-approved cork leather bottle carriers. They also give 1% back for the planet. They're a member of that. So if you'd like to take that offer up, you can simply use the code CAREMORE, CAREMORE, when you check out at www.carrymore.co. And we would also like to give a shout out to Beach Patrol and Love Our Street groups. They're a fantastic way to take action. So please check it out. Beach Patrol does an incredible job along the beaches. Love Our Street for the suburban groups. If you'd like to start your own group as well, go and do that. So there are two wonderful groups to join in. Okay, so we might jump into Heidi's, a big thank you to our panelists for joining us. We might jump into Heidi's workshop now. So thank you, Del, and thank you, Fam. You're welcome to stick around if you'd like.
Bye, thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Anthony,
Well,
you're going to hang around as well?
Yeah, I'm really interested to see the workshop, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. So we're going to present Heidi with an AMDI workshop. Anthony, if you switch off your video, then it just goes to Heidi and Heidi can share her screen. Awesome. We'll hand it over to you. Thank you. You're on mute. You just have to unmute yourself. And whenever you're ready, you can share your screen as well.
All right, thank you. I am just flicking screens.
Might be a good opportunity for people who've been sitting here for a while to just do a quick stretch.
All right. Okay, I think we're good. All right, can you guys see that Tangaroa Blue slide?
Fantastic, yep, it's working.
Excellent, awesome. All right, well, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. I'm really happy to be able to present a little bit more about Tangaroa Blue and how we collect data, as well as a little bit of information on how we've been using the data that's been coming through. So as I mentioned, Tangaroa Blue started 16 years ago in the southwest of WA, just a really small community effort trying to address marine debris washing up in a national park. And then the program kind of went national, and now we run a program called the Australian Marine Debris Initiative, which houses the National Marine Debris Database. Last year, we were really excited to bring a new program on board, which is called Reef Clean. And that's specifically a project happening along the Great Barrier Reef, and that's a 5-year federal government tender that we won. And of course, a big thank you to all the volunteers and supporters that have been involved in collecting data and submitting it to that database. Let's see if here we go. Alrighty, so our mission is to reduce marine debris, but if all we do is clean up, that's all we're ever going to do. And I wanted to show you this photo because this is taken in Cape York. We do a helicopter survey between Cooktown and the very, very tip of Cape York every year. And it enables us to monitor areas where you cannot access by car or by boat. And this is one of those spots. And what really defined this spot for me, now we go back to it each year when we fly, is the number of plastic fishing floats. And if we look at data collected from beach cleanups where people can drive to sites, we would never see this many plastic floats because a lot of people select them, they take them home, they use them as souvenirs. And this really showed us that some of the data sets, if we just clean up are really easy to get to sites, can be biased because there are a lot of other people picking things up. And we really need to get a handle on some of those more remote locations as well, so we get a true indication of where some of these sources of marine debris are coming from. So the Australian Marine Debris Initiative has has a framework around it, and that's what's shown in this diagram. But you can see that the cleanup of activities, which are the very, very top part of this, is actually only a very small part of what we've been trying to do, and that's what we put in the treating the symptom type of category. And below that is all the other work that's being done by volunteers and partners in actually preventing marine debris through data collection, through source reduction plans, and then of course by monitoring those to make sure we are getting our bang for our buck and feeding into policy at a local, state and federal level, as well as through the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, which is at an international level as well. So it's about finding that holistic framework that just doesn't address what's already out there, but works together with that to find ways of stopping at the source as well. And as you heard, education awareness is vital, because if people don't care, they're not inclined to change, and we need to give them those tools to really understand what their consumer choices are resulting in. And I wanted just to give you a quick update of where the database is, and I downloaded these numbers last night, so this is hot off the press. So we just kicked over our 16th millionth item of data that's been submitted into the database. And that has been possible with over 436,000 volunteer hours. And if we times that by $30 an hour, which is what a lot of the volunteering hours are rated at now, it would be over $13 million that has been contributed by community, individual volunteers and partner organisations to address this issue. So the Australians are very connected with this issue and want to do something about it. And this is an absolute indicator of that as well. We now have over 3,500 cleanup sites around the country, and we're just about to kick 20,000 cleanup events. And of course, that's been possible again from over 1,300 partner organisations. So we really thought it would be valuable having a framework where everybody can feed data in, it's collected in the same way, so it can be used at a very local level, but also at the highest levels of government, and then also used to monitor these strategies and these policies to see whether they're actually getting the outcome that they were put in place for. We were pretty excited that the Australian government a couple of years ago used the Australian Marine Debris Initiative as a case study in their report to the UN for the Sustainable Development Goals. And if you haven't heard about these are 17 goals that have been agreed on a global platform that we need to be addressing for the Earth to remain sustainable or become more sustainable. And number 14, goal number 14 is called Life Below Water, and there's actually a marine debris target under that. And number 17 is partnerships for the goals. So trying to work together to really maximise all our efforts and of course reduce duplication. So these are things that can help organisations to connect with greater programs that are happening not just at a state or a national level, but also an international level as well. I did mention the Operation Clean Sweep program in the panel there. And this was a really interesting one because we'd identified these plastic resin pellets, which are really the size of a grain of rice, and they're used to manufacture plastic products. So they're what we call primary microplastics. They're not plastic products that are breaking up, but they actually haven't even been made into anything yet. And we've actually found that more than 80% of the beaches that we've looked on them, we actually find plastic resin pellets. So we started looking upstream along creeks and riverbeds and in stormwater drains around industrial areas, and we found that there are a lot of leakage from domestic plastic industry members, as well as the logistics industry as well. So those trucks that are driving around, if there's a spill on the back of a truck, you'll find that they trickle these pellets off. And what we discovered in Victoria was that when we reported these big spills, like you can see in that middle photo, to local council, local council had said that this is actually an EPA issue. And when we tried to report this to the EPA, they said it was a local council issue. So there wasn't really any compliance happening to stop some of these big pollution events happening. And so while we were trying to engage the industry to get on board with this program, we were also working really hard with local government and the EPA on who was going to take a compliance response. And in July 2018, the EPA issued this fact sheet that you can see, which is a guidance on handling plastic resin pellets, and they've taken responsibility. And we've had a couple of really good wins from some of those really bad manufacturers that just continually leach plastic out of their factory sites. So if anybody knows anyone in the plastics industry or the logistics industry, please get them to look at this program. It's free to join, and it's best practice that we're trying to showcase not only in Victoria but across Australia. And we've just launched last week our Reef Clean source reduction plans for this half of the year. There's a whole lot of collateral on our website. So if you're interested in any of these programs, we can connect you even if you're outside of the Great Barrier Reef. But we wanted to kind of tackle 5 issues that we'd seen in the Great Barrier Reef data set from 2019. And so we've created 5 digital campaigns because we couldn't run our workshops as per normal because of COVID. So we decided to run some digital campaigns. So we've got the Ditch the Flick campaign, educating people that cigarette butts are made of plastic, and we're trying to change that action of flicking. We've got the Look After Your Tackle for our fisher people out there, and encouraging them to try and remove and reuse fishing gear, and of course to dispose of that all properly. We have a bit of a challenge coming up, which is called the Know Your Knots Challenge. So we've got a well-known fisherman from the Sports Fishing Association who's tying a clinch knot, did it in 9.5 seconds. So we've got a challenge out there on social media to see if anyone can beat him. We've got the Don't Dump on Our Reef, educating people that dog poo actually has some real nasty parasites in it. And that's a reason not to leave them on the beach. And also just public space litter, to be a litter hero and spend a bit of time looking for a bin as opposed to just littering. So there's a whole heap of collateral that we've developed out of the data that's come from the Great Barrier Reef work in the last year that are all up on our website if anybody wants to use them as well. So we're going to dive into the data-based app, the Australian Marine Debris Initiative data app, which is available both on the Android platform and also on the iPhone platform, and it's free to download. So you can either just search for Australian Marine Debris Initiative or the Tangaroa Blue Foundation, and you should see it coming in. From there, it goes hand in hand with a couple of other resources that we have. And if you head over to the Tangaroa Blue website, there's a tab there for resources where you can download our identification manual. And that actually goes through the 140 categories that are in the database so that you know what goes where when you're counting and sorting your items. Now, we have heard, wow, there's so many categories. It takes a fair bit of time to sometimes do the data. If you've got a big data set, like what Kylie mentioned up in the Northern Territory, there's so much debris. But we really wanted to identify where the source of the debris was coming from. And so we do really need that level of detail. And an example of that is if we just record something as a plastic bottle on a beach, it could be a bleach bottle, an oil bottle, a drink bottle, a shampoo bottle. And each of those ones potentially could come from different sources. So that's why we narrow the plastic bottle down to, for example, a drink bottle. Now, if we have a drink bottle on the beach, that also potentially could come from a lot of different sources. It could have come from a passing cargo ship, or from litter, or a stormwater drain. It could come from ocean currents from another country. So we even have the option to collect data on barcodes and brands to enable us to really try and pinpoint that source down. And while in Port Phillip Bay, most of the debris, over 95% of the stuff that you find in the bay has originated from the catchment, if we go up to places like Cape York, 95% of the stuff actually comes from overseas. So the strategies to stop these items are very, very different depending on where you're looking at. And the data shows us that regionally, there is very different marine debris signatures, whether you're looking at Cape York, Port Phillip Bay, around Sydney, in the Swan River down near in Perth. And so that's why the data base is set up that way, and why we have those lots of those categories. It's because it's to really try and ID what the source is. So the ID manual walks through each of those categories with photos and lists, so you know exactly where things go. And once you kind of get your head around it, it gets a lot easier and faster. We also have a couple of videos on our YouTube channel. So if you just go to YouTube and Google Tangaroa Blue, you'll see that we have a 5-minute video on how to use the app. So that walks through each of the things that I'm going to show you today. So if you wanted to see that further, then check out at that one. You can go through it a little bit slower. And we've also just loaded another 10 small bite-sized, 1.5-minute videos on certain items. So the story I just told you about the plastic drink bottle and why we collect the barcodes, there's a 2-minute video about that. So it unpacks some of our categories to make it a lot easier for people to understand why we're separating things in certain ways, and that makes it a bit more logical for people when they start to collecting. So make sure you check out all of those resources because they're all there to make the whole data collection easier. And of course, we want it to be as robust as possible, because we want politicians to be listening to what we want changed. We need to have data that they can trust in. And so we need to have robust data. And that's why taking the effort into really making sure the data set is collected properly is really important, because we really want to be using this to push for change. So I'm hoping that everybody has had a chance to download the app, or if not, are doing it really quickly now. I'm going to walk through the 4 main pages of the app. So when you first log into the app or you first download it, you'll see that there are 4 introductory pages. You can choose to just see those once and not see them every time that you go in, or you can leave them on and go through them each time that you go in. But it basically gives you a welcome. It talks about your cleanup, what's the kind of information that we're going to ask you about. We want you to know that anytime you input data into the database, you always own that. And that data will be used for source reduction and for education and awareness. But if there was going to be any other person that actually wanted to use it, that we would actually come and ask you, before we used it. So it's really important that you know that that's owned by you guys. And whenever it's used in reports or papers, then those people will be acknowledged as well. And there's just a link there for all those other resources that I mentioned as well. So once you get onto the home page, you can see up in the corner there with the orange circle, that's your menu. And your menu has a few items in there. You've got your home page, the click on your starter cleanup, upload any cleanups that you've already inputted or you've saved, a list of our partners that helped us fund the app. There's some settings that you can also do pre-settings on there, and also a login. So you do need to create a login just for when you submit the data. So if we have any questions when it goes in and gets vetted, we know who to contact and who submitted it. So that's your menu. If we go into the starter cleanup, now you can either do this on the fly. So the cleanups that we've been doing at the moment up in Far North Queensland have been monitoring cleanups. So there's not a huge amount of rubbish that we're picking up. They're smaller areas. And we've actually been just recording this in the app as we go. You can also take all the rubbish back to a central point and sort it and count it afterwards as well. So either way, you can use the app to collect your data. And when you start a cleanup, the first thing we want to know is about the collection itself. So what was the date? What time did you start? How long was the cleanup? How many people were there? The distance that you covered? How many bags you filled? And what was the weight? As well as any organisations that you want to acknowledge in that data collection. So that's all up in your first page as you can enter. So a couple of hints from that. The hours can be part hours, so you can put down 1.5 hours. It doesn't have to be a whole hour. However, the number of people does need to be a whole number. It doesn't like accepting points in some of the fields. A standard cleanup bag is one of those white Cleanup Australia bags that you see, or if you've got one of our Tangaroa Blue cleanup kits. It's 56 litres. And so if you're using a different size bag, we just want you to convert it to that. And you can put them in as half a bag, quarter of a bag, a full bag. So if it's not full, then just kind of put it as a fraction. The weight is done in kilograms, and we just use a set of fish weighing scales that we have, or you can get a pair of luggage scales. If you don't have one of those, then we just ask that you estimate it, and you can make a note that you've estimated if you don't have scales with you. Weight is kind of a funky, I guess, metric, because you can have wet weight and dry weight, sandy weight, muddy weight. And so scientifically, it's not the most reliable metric, but it does give us an idea based along with the volume, so how many bags that you have. And it is a really good tool for media and reporting back as well as what you collected. The length can be either measured using a tape, or you can measure 2 points on Google Earth afterwards, and that's done in meters. And the organisations here are any organisations involved in the cleanup that you'd like to acknowledge. So you can have multiple organisations, you just need to put a comma in between them. And then you just click on the next button. The second page is your location and where you did the cleanup. Now, if you've been doing a cleanup at your site again and again and again, when you go to hit on the site, the location, you'll see that area actually gets highlighted in green, and you see the name of that site. But if it's a new site and nobody's ever cleaned up there before, then you'll find that you'll just need to drop your pin in the middle of the cleanup site, and next time when you come back, the data team would have created a new cleanup site for you. And so here you can just drag the marker or just hold it down and it'll attach. You can put satellite background on there as well, so that if that's a little bit easier to clean up your site. And you can see here on the right where it says located within the St Kilda West Beach empty cleanup site, that's a site that's already been done in the past, where this one on the left is a new site. So there's no name that's popped up afterwards. So that'll help you identify exactly where your cleanup is done. Then you click on the next button and you go to the third page, and this is what did you pick up. So you just need to add an item to start off with, and then you can see the search bar here. You just write the name of the item that you're trying to find. Now these are all aligned with the identification manual as far as the category names, but there are a lot of items already listed as part of those groups, so it should be able to pick up fairly easily. So you can see some examples here of the categories that are already there. So you just pop that in the search function, and then it'll ID those ones. So here I've started to write cigarette, and so you can see cigarette lighters and cigarette butts just pop up. So you just select the right one. If I select, or if I write drink, you can see we've got metal drink tins, we've got Tetra Paks or drink cartons, we've got plastic drink bottles, or we've got the 6-pack rings. So again, you just try and make it an easy word for it to search on, and you'll be able to find your category pretty easily through that function. A couple of other examples there. If we put in cup, you might get foam cups, you might get plastic cups, or you might even get something that has the word cup in it, like occupational health and safety item. Rope, we have natural rope, we have rope scraps, and we have rope in meters, so that would be more nylon rope. Now, one of the things with the rope and other kind of linear items like fishing line, for example, if it's lengths, we like to know how long the item is, if it's more than a meter. Because if you just put down one and the clump of rope was, like 2 kilometers long, it wouldn't really give you information on the extent of that item. And so we've done anything that's over a meter. We ask you how many meters it was, and you may need to estimate that if it's in a real big clump. But if it's less than a meter, then we just count it, how many pieces of those they are. So that's our scrap item here that's less than a meter. And then we have this other category that's called remnants. And we define remnants as anything that's less than 50% intact. So it's in the process of breaking up. So under plastic, we've got hard bits of plastic remnants. We also have soft plastic remnants, which can be little bits of plastic bag or Glad wrap or things like that. We have burnt plastic, and particular on ocean beaches that are really getting a lot of debris from offshore sources. We find a lot of burnt stuff that can actually be scrape-offs from cargo ships that are incinerating their rubbish, and they need to clear the bottom of the incinerator before the next load goes in. We do get a lot of burnt clumps of different types of plastic together because of that. And then we have our rubber remnants in that one as well. So once you've identified your item, you've selected that, and you want to make sure you've got the right spot. We actually have a little eye icon on each page, and if you click on that, it'll give you a photo of that category, and it'll also give you all the items that are listed in that. So you can just do a double check that you're actually putting it into the right category, and that's on each of the pages. So we've got the right spot now. Now we just need to pop in the total of items that we found, and you can put in any notes. And we only really need notes if there's something that you're unsure of, or if there was something that was of particular interest that you want to record as well. There is also a camera function, so you can take a photo of that item before you submit it in, and then you just click on the add button on the bottom there. Now, once you've added that item, you'll see that it now has popped up in your list. So then if you decided, hey, wow, I found another one of those items, I need to add it, all you need to do is to swipe here on the right-hand side on that item, and you'll see that you can either delete it or you can view it. And by viewing it, it allows you to edit it. So you can just add another 1 or another 5 as you go along. Now, one of those things that we were talking about as far as barcodes and brands and where stuff comes from, we have another little icon there. So if you have a look here, you can see that we've got a tag here that says details, and that's where you just put your number and any notes. So you can see that there's also a label tab. And if you click on the label tab, it'll take you just to a second page where you can actually enter those barcodes and brand details. And by clicking on this barcode scanner, it'll actually take a photo of that barcode for you, so you don't have to enter 13 numbers into your phone. You can identify the country of origin by just ticking on this arrow here. And most of the time your label will tell you what it is. But if you're really unsure, you can download a list of barcodes, which the first 3 numbers will tell you the country of manufacture. So Australian items all start with 93 something. Chinese items are in the 6s. South Korea, I think, is 480. Indonesia is 899. So that gives us an idea of at least where it was manufactured. Doesn't necessarily tell us where it was sold or imported, but it gives us an idea. And particularly for remote areas, we know that there's not a lot of different types of stores. So we can identify if it's being sold locally or if it's not through that barcode. You can add your label, your brand information here as well, and any other kind of description that you might want to add to that as well. So you don't have to do this for everything, but for those projects that you're really trying to narrow down exactly where this stuff is coming from, there is the opportunity to click this extra layer of detail in the app. Now, we do have a couple of other options for those people that are doing microplastic sampling, and of course our nurdle hunt that we do for plastic resin pellets each year. And just by popping in either pollution rating or microplastic surveys, there's 2 different ways that you can enter that kind of information. If you are setting up a proper microplastic sample project, I just recommend to get in contact with our data team, and they can actually set your project up in the app for you, so you don't have to enter all the little details every time. But we do have the opportunity to do that. And Sustainability Victoria actually funded this part of the app when we first got it up, because they were running a microplastics project and wanted to add that to the app itself. Now, once you've submitted all of your items that you've collected, then you just click on the next button, and that will take you to the last page. And this page just wants to know a little bit about the conditions of your cleanup site. So what's a bit of a story around why you found what you did? So one of the questions is, did you find any plastic resin pellets? So you can just tick on that and make a note. A note might be, yep, we found them along the new tide line, or they were all up in the dune, or there were thousands everywhere. The next question is, did you observe any dead or injured wildlife? And so you can put a tick there. And we will forward that information onto the wildlife stranding if you've got one in the state that you're in through the state government. Did you observe any highly unusual site conditions? And things like that could be, look, we had super king tides last week, or we had a really significant weather event last Friday. We had a cyclone come through a month ago. So all of those things would maybe change what you would normally find on the beach. So it puts a little bit of context around your data set. And then if there's anything additional that you might want to mention about your cleanup. And if I talk again about what Kylie said about so much debris up in the Northern Territory that they can't count anything, that's something that you could actually add into this section here. So you could make a note to say, look, we collected 100 bags and that weighed 600 kilos, but we only actually counted 20 bags that weighed 100 kilos. So it gives us a really good idea of exactly what you were able to collect and why. And if then we need to extrapolate data, we can look at that later on. But it just puts into a little bit of context around what your data set means. Now, if you're also doing a particular project that you want to tag a project code, so Port Phillip Bay Fund round 1, you could put that in the notes section too. And then if you need us to download a full data set for you, you could ask us to say, hey, this is our organisation name. We just want all the data from Port Phillip Bay Fund round 1 that's in the notes section, and it makes us really easy for us to find that data set for you. Now, once you've filled in all of your items there, you can see that that last one there says save. And so that means that your data has been all finalised, all the 4 pages. Now, if you haven't done one of those items that is a required part, you'll see that there's this little missing details pop up that will come up, and it'll tell you what those items are that you might have forgotten. So in this case, it was I'd forgotten to put out how many hours it was or the people attending. And so you can say okay, and it'll let you go back and add those details that are required. And then you can go back and save it again, and it'll tell you, hey, you're awesome, and you have submitted your data set. And so that you know that it has been finalised. Now, just because it's been finalised, we still need to just upload it. And that's because in some places they might not have phone reception, that they can't actually get onto the internet. So this app will allow you to collect data even if you don't have any phone reception. And then when you do get into phone reception, then you can upload it. The other really good way is that if you save it and then you need to go home and maybe measure the distance on Google Earth before you submit it, you can save it and just edit any of those details that you need to before you submit it as well. So don't forget to submit. So the way that you do that is you just go back to your menu and you need to make a login, and that login can either be through Google, or you can set up your own password. And once you've then logged in, it'll tell you that you are logged in by saying, hey, welcome back. Then you can go to your upload cleanups. And this means you're really ready to put it up. Now you can see here I have one data set that I need to upload. And so by making that little swipey thing, it'll open it up, and you can see that that's listed in my queued file. So by swiping it open, I can either delete it, I can look at it, which gives me the ability to edit anything that I need, or if I'm really happy to submit it to the database, I just click the blue one, which is the upload data. And then that goes straight into the Australian Marine Debris Initiative database for the guys to vet and have a look at. Now you can see here, once I've uploaded that, it tells me that I have no cleanups that are in my queued menu anymore. So I know that it's actually gone into the database. And if I have a look at this uploaded tab here, you can see how many cleanups that I've actually already uploaded. Now, if you do need to edit any one of those, you can't edit it at this stage. You just need to send us an email and say, hey, I think I made a mistake, or I needed to add something else and I forgot. You just send an email to the data team, and they can actually make any of those background edits once it's been submitted. Now, this is what the database looks like. This is the online portal. And so the categories are exactly the same. The format is all exactly the same. The app is actually something that, you know, a lot of people wanted to submit data to. If you still prefer to use the online data portal, you can do it exactly the same way. Both of them sit side by side, and it all goes into that one spot. Now, once the data is in the database, the data team actually vets it all just to make sure that the location is fit. If they need to create the location because it's a new site, they'll do that. If anything looks a bit weird, they might get in contact with you and say, hey, that looks a bit weird from the other cleanups in the same area. Can we confirm something? Or if you found something really weird or very, very interesting, then they might need a little bit more detail, and they'll know who to contact with from there just by the login details. Once you're into the online database, you can access a lot of your data already from there in preset reports. So top 10 items and how many cleanups were done at a certain area, and you can make a map either around a certain site, or you can do it based on a state or a even national basis. If you would like all your raw data, then you just send us an email. As I mentioned before, you always own your data, so we don't have it all accessible there for anybody else to use. They can only see those summary reports, which are really good to report on for things like grants. But if you want a full set, just send us an email, and the data team can download that in an Excel and forward it through to you as well. So that's pretty much a really quick run through of the database and the app. And as I mentioned, those videos that are on our YouTube channel will all walk through this, and you can do it at your own pace. I am really happy to take any questions if anybody might have any questions at this stage.
Yeah, we've actually got Arlian, the plastic free boy, on. So Arlian, I'm going to add you. You can talk now. Hey, Arlian. How's he going? I might pop him on to see because he's one of our young change makers that we're that's sharing tomorrow, which is really exciting. So Arlian, let's see if you can jump on if you're ready. No, disappeared for now. That's okay. He's probably on there somewhere. Arlian, and Corinne is his mum, who has made a pretty cool film together. They've made Plastic Alarm, so we'll be showing that tomorrow after the arts panel. So his mum will be joining the arts panel. Does anyone have any, let's have a look, any questions? Here we go. We're on an island and it would be great to apply your app on Bahrain. So wondering, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, look, we actually have quite a few international partners that are using the app as well. Look, the oceans are all connected. So if we don't look at this at a regional context, we're going to really miss half of the story. So we're happy for people to use the app and the database, even if they're not in Australia. We might need a little bit more assistance in locating sites or, you know, learning the local names, especially if the script is not in what we're normally writing in. So we don't have a problem with that at all. And we encourage people to connect. And at least, you know, what I mentioned before about if everybody uses the same methodology, if we use the same categories, it means we can compare and value add and really monitor things in a way that creates more value. If it's not, if we're all calling things a different way, it's really hard to make a case. And so that was one of the main purposes of trying to create the Australian Marine Debris Initiative. Tangaroa Blue is just another partner in the AMD network, and we really need to leverage off everybody's inputs if we're going to, you know, to make the changes that need to be done. We know that big business, you know, collaborates to get changes done in their industries. The not-for-profit sector, you know, we're not as well funded, and sometimes we don't work as well together as we possibly could to get those outcomes that we need. And so that was one of the purposes of designing this platform, is to say, hey, let's all work together, because then we can help each other get those changes.
Wonderful. Let's see. It says, okay, I will introduce it to our Bahrain diving volunteer team. Awesome.
Just make a note in the notes, if it's an underwater cleanup, just let us know that it was underwater, or if it was on the beach. We would assume it's on a beach unless you make that note. So that just clarifies it for the data team.
Fantastic. We've also got, hi Heidi, that's awesome. Connecting points from the Data for Good webinar yesterday. Does your data connect in with it, or is the app used by TERN, Project Aware, Citizen Science and Industry, etc.?
So Project Aware, we work with side by side. Again, data collection methodology is what actually prevents a lot of these things talking together. And that's what we've really tried to address. So we work very closely with Chemistry Australia and the plastics industry, particularly on the plastic resin pellet issue. You guys might have heard about the Let's Drain the Drain project that we've just been running in Port Phillip Bay, around Port Phillip Bay. We've had 120 stormwater traps in 6 different council areas that we've actually been emptying every 6 weeks and doing full audits on everything that's in there, including brands. So that data is sitting with the Victorian State Government and also with all the local councils as well. So it's about ensuring that when the data is collected, we can actually provide it to those bodies that need it, as well as scientists. So we work really closely with 4 or 5 different universities that are looking at different issues and different ways that we can solve problems. And so we provide the data for those guys as well.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, I think that's all. Just give a moment if anyone else would have a question, Heidi. Otherwise, we will be sending out some information. So following up that you can check out all this. Here we go. Simona's asked, is the Tangaroa Blue app also used by other marine debris cleanup organisations like Sea Shepherd, Clean Up Australia, so that all the data gets collected in one pot?
And that's the purpose. Clean Up Australia has a different methodology in that they don't collect, they don't have a category for everything. So they've selected the main items that they want to focus on to put their data in, where we want to know everything that's there to make it a really comprehensive and complete data set. So those two things don't align. Sea Shepherd were inputting their data into the database for a real number of years. I believe that they have some internal processes that they're doing at the moment, and we know that certain Sea Shepherd coordinators are putting it in themselves, but the head office has decided to keep their data themselves from the last couple of years, which is really, really disappointing.
Should be that collaborative sort of approach. How about, do you know if Beach Patrol and places and groups like that?
It's really the same thing with Beach Patrol. Again, it really comes down to the individual coordinator on the ground. So the Beach Patrol litter app, again, it's a very select series of items that they want to report on, where we really need to be comprehensive about this. So I can have a look at a data set that only collected 20 items and know what those 20 items are, but there's no place for collection for all the other items. And if we want to be scientifically robust and we really want to push for change through government, we need to have a really robust data set and methodology. And so we do have 140 categories, and it's unlikely that in a cleanup you'd ever get 140 different categories. But we need to be really understanding of all the things that are picked up at a site. Otherwise, our data is going to be biased. And unfortunately, some of the other data sets that have started up, after the Tangaroa Blue database has been around, to streamline and make things easier doesn't necessarily result in better data. And that's what our real focus is in. How do we really get that scientifically robust data that the government is going to listen to? And so individual coordinators can decide what they want to do for those organisations. And so we do have some great relationships with those people. We would just really like to see the NGO sector get together on this one and really understand our power as an organisation together is much more than us all running around doing our own thing.
Absolutely, definitely. And I've seen with Seaside Scavenger, they're great. They use, they've, having been a volunteer with them as well, kind of going through, like, there is a lot in there, but once you familiarize yourself with it, it becomes a lot easier. And also having kind of images and that sort of stuff as your app, and as everything has been updated, it does become a lot easier to kind of get your head around it. It might seem overwhelming at the start, but yeah. We also have a few more questions. Excellent, thank you. I assume it fits in with the DIMM then too. Data interoperability maturity model. And then one last question was around the debris disposal process. So what do you advise after you've done this? What should we do, I guess?
With the rubbish, yeah, because you just don't want to create it to create another issue around that. Now we try and use the existing recycling processes where we are. In more remote areas, it's really challenging. We actually bring back bulk bags of hard plastics and recyclables out of Cape York because there's no recycling system up there at all. They basically the communities have a hole in the ground that gets burnt or buried, and that's because of the costs associated with transporting waste out of Cape York is phenomenal. So we will take whatever we can. There are biosecurity rules as well as far as what you can move and what you can't, so we have to be careful with those. There will always, unfortunately, be a certain percentage which can only go into landfill because of the state, or it's just not recyclable. But we recycle whatever we can. And we even do things like selling bags of rubbish for artists. So we have a C-store which has bags, and you can buy a bag of toothbrushes or thongs or rope or ghost net, which is always very popular. And artists around Australia are using them for their artwork. Schools use them for their artworks and their school classes as well. So we're trying to be really creative, and we've also got our finger like really on the pulse as far as new technologies. The waste to energy for us is not an example because of the residue is toxic that in most cases get left behind. We really want to be using this to show what needs to be prevented. How do we actually stop this stuff going into communities, remote communities in particular, but how do we really process into new alternatives that aren't going to have this, forever ending, legacy once it's released into the environment.
Absolutely. And we've also got a question following on that is around, is there any other collaborations? So you've mentioned some of them, like with the ghost nets and things like that, kind of moving forward with other recycling and circular economy to make products. What else is happening in that space?
Oh, look, it's a very fast moving space, and it's because Australia is having a recycling crisis that we need to start looking into that. Technology and science need to get on board with this as well. A lot of the beach plastic that gets removed isn't recyclable in its normal format, and that's because it's brittle, it's degraded, it doesn't have the properties that a clean bottle that was only used 5 minutes ago has. And so there's a lot of, it's a little bit more complex in how do we put that in, and in a lot of the time it needs still to be blended with a virgin or a cleaner recycling item. And where can this happen? Like there's, Melbourne and around Victoria has a lot of recyclers, but there's not a lot of other places that materials can be recycled in, which is a real challenge. And the costs, people say to me all the time, why don't we just do what Germany does? Or, they separate all this stuff. And it's because our population is so distributed around the country. The cost associated in moving waste from the Kimberley or Cape York or Brisbane to Melbourne or from Perth, it really, really challenges the systems that we currently have as set in place. And I think that looking at a more regional basis or a regional framework is going to enable us to tackle these, but we need science and technology to meet us there as well.
Yeah, definitely. We might just wrap up with a success story. Like, what is something that you, as Tangaroa Blue and with the AMDI, like what's been something that has been like, wow, we achieved this?
Well, the Operation Clean Sweep program for me is probably one of my highlights, because it brought to the table a partner that, traditionally wouldn't be a partner that you could bring to the table, because, we're fighting plastics. So why would we sit down with the chemical industry? And it's because we agreed on one thing, is that resin pellets shouldn't be lost into the environment. And we created a network and a framework and a basis to reach that goal. And so I've been really proud of that one. But I guess, a quirky story is a Cape York story that we had from a couple of years ago. As I mentioned, we record the barcodes and the items of particularly plastic bottles, because they're easy to do up in Cape York. And, we've collected over 10,000 drink bottles from one cleanup. So you can imagine sorting and counting those and barcodes and the rest of that. It can be quite a bit of a process as well. But we noticed a brand that we had never ever seen before on the beaches in Cape York wash up, and we found over 300 of them on this particular beach. And it was a brand from Vietnam. The bottles looked brand new. They still had the labels on them. The expiry dates were still 12 months in advance. They definitely hadn't floated from Vietnam. And we worked with the Department of Agriculture and had one of their biosecurity officers with us on site. And I mentioned to her that this was really weird and that we'd never ever seen this brand before in Cape York. And all of a sudden we've got hundreds of them. Now, she fed that information back to her bosses when she got back to the office, and they handed it over to Border Force. And Border Force called us and asked us, could I give them information on where we'd found these bottles and where and how many. And they put that information into some ocean modelling and actually sent a Border Force vessel out into the middle of the Coral Sea. And they found a fishing fleet, an illegal fishing fleet in the Coral Sea from Vietnam.
Wow.
So we're even able to track down illegal fishing vessels, some international ones, from rubbish that had washed up, because the level of detail of the data that we've been collecting enabled us to identify that as not normal.
Wow, absolutely. I just realized I don't have my video on, so people are just hearing a voice. Thank you so much, Heidi, for that. That was just incredible. I don't know if Anthony would like to say a few last words as well before we kind of wrap up. I'm just going to do a quick share. So just for people to help support Zero Waste Victoria as well, we've got some membership options, as well as you can donate to us via givenow.com.au to kind of continue this work that we're doing. We've also got the rest of the festival if people are interested in checking that out. We have Slow Fashion tomorrow morning, so that's going to be a great one looking at fashion consumption. really delving into your wardrobe as well as mending. And we also have guests from Salvo stores talking about charity shops, what's happening, especially with COVID and everything, as well as High Clothing, which is a New Zealand brand that's done a really great job looking at really delving into setting up their own brand and going through Southeast Asia to really look at natural, ethical ways of creating clothing. We also have the arts, so we've got a great panel looking at how arts can inspire, move and empower change. So we've got a great panel that is going to be chatting about that, as well as our young change makers. So Arlian's been on this call as well. I can see that he's been checking out and I'm guessing learning lots, and it's been incredible. We've also got his film Plastic Alarm that we're showing tomorrow. So some really exciting things happening. But I will hand you, I think, Anthony, do you want to say a few last words?
Oh, I think it's all pretty much being said. I just want to thank you guys for putting on this event. It's this kind of thing that we need more of. So well done, Zero Waste Victoria, Emily and Mariana and your team.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to everyone for jumping in today. It's been a really massive afternoon looking at plastic but also finishing on what people can do. So we will send out the PDF. It's going to be a great one. It's got all these resources and actions that you can take so you can connect with our presenters, books and things that they've recommended for reading, and podcasts and things for listening, websites to explore, as well as some of the actions that you can take, including Plastic Free July, as well as using the AMDI app as well. So thank you so much, Heidi, and thank you, Anthony, for hosting. It's been incredible this afternoon. We hope you feel empowered to go out there and take action and make sure we look after the planet however we can. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for having us, everybody.
Yeah,
Enjoy the rest of the weekend.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.